We live in a world that seems to be headed towards more and more polarization and separation. People seem to be going to the extremes of ideologies and expressions. We see this in the political realm, where more and more conservative and liberals seem to be entrenching themselves in their own ideology and their own ways of thinking, and little dialogue and effective communication seems to be happening. We see this in the financial world, where recently these bank closures have affected the banks, so it seems to be like an all or nothing kind of situation. We see it also environmentally. We see extremes of hot and cold and winds and tornadoes and effective, very strong weather patterns that seem to be going to the extremes. And of course, we see it in our spirituality of our planet as well, where it seems like more and more the fundamentalist camp seem to get stronger, and the more liberal or progressive camps also seem to be getting stronger. And again, not much in the middle. And so how do we come to understand this? How can we sort of help this polar divide? Well, it helps to understand that all of us, all human beings, I believe, have an inner craving, I would say a soul craving, for that which is holy, to hold some reverence, to experience awe, to touch that sense of wonder and great profound joy. Even we could say the joy of being. I think all of us share in that desire that experience in the body is a very important one, and very, very, very needed one. In the spiritual realm, the people that I associate with seem to be seeing that many of the young people today, and what we might call the Generation Z, is not coming to church. They prefer to stay home. Many of them are saying things like, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Not wanting to identify with any particular ideology. And of course, for my colleagues, this is a tremendous challenge, because they're seeing the very future of the church is threatened. And nevertheless, I believe that even those people who say they're spiritual and not religious, we're joined in that sense that we all want the experience of a higher order. Let's say a higher power. Let's call it God. Let's call it reverence, wonder, awe. In traditional Christianity, we call it the experience of the Holy Spirit. It all speaks to the same thing. Juan Enrique Toro greeting you on this wonderful day, thanking you for the thumbs up, for subscribing to the channel, and of course, thank you to all of you who are making those wonderful contributions and donations to the channel. The links to all of those channels of donations are in the comments below. Jesus spoke to this, and he says in John 14:23-26, he was speaking to his disciples, and he says, Jesus answered them, "Those who love me will keep my word, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. And whoever does not love me does not keep my words. And the words that you hear is not mine, but is from the Father who sent me. I have said these things to you while I am still with you. But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you everything and remind you of all that I have said to you." So, independent of how you interpret this idea of the Holy Spirit, let's not get stuck in language. Jesus here is making reference to the Holy Spirit. Of course, in Christianity, we make a lot of reference to that. But let's not get beyond ourselves. Let's understand what it is that he's saying. What's interesting here is that as he was speaking to his disciples, the people who were working with him, whom he was training, he was teaching, he was dedicating special time and attention to, he doesn't designate any one of them to be a future leader of the group. understanding that he was going to go through the crucifixion and resurrection process, he knew he wasn't going to be around to continue in this ministry. And yet he doesn't assign anyone to be a particular teacher. In fact, he says there's only going to be one teacher from now on. And he identifies that teacher as the advocate or the Holy Spirit. Right? And that's how we're going to move forward with these teachings, Jesus says, that I've been sharing with you. So we need to understand, what is this business of the Holy Spirit? Well, a very short definition is it's the activity of God within us. Oftentimes it's felt in the body. I had a teacher who would say many times, we experience God in the body or we don't experience God at all. And so it is the activity, is the movement of spirit. It is the sense of holiness, of reverence, right? These are deep words. And like I say, if we get beyond the idea of the Holy Spirit, this idea of holiness or reverence or awe or wonder is something that all human souls crave. We look for it. We're hungry for it. We want to provoke it in our life. Sometimes we call the Holy Spirit the Comforter, because it is that experience of God that brings us that sense of comfort, of peace, that sense of finding light in the darkness. And so then, after knowing a little bit more about what the Holy Spirit is, we might ask, well, then how can we have this experience in our life? It's a very good question. Well, obviously, it is something that can happen spontaneously. You know, the other day, just walking out, I saw a sunrise. Sunrise was so beautiful, inspired awe within me. It moved the cells of my body. There was joy. There was a deep breath that was really beautiful. Spontaneously, we can come into this awareness, right? And surprisingly, spontaneously, it's wonderful. Of course, our spiritual practice helps us do this on a regular basis. Our meditation and our prayer. Right? When we center in, when we come into that awareness, and we practice things like a gratitude journal and these kinds of things, this helps to stimulate also the awareness of the activity of God within us. We're putting attention on that. That's our spiritual practice is all about. And of course, it also happens when we consciously do what we might call a mind shift. Sometimes we call it forgiveness. Right? It's that ability that we have to move consciously in our mind from that which is limited, right? We could call it false, to that which is true, or we could call it eternal. You know, the experience of being stuck in limited thinking, to be in a negative mindset, to sort of be in a prison of our own mind. It's an experience of limitation, of darkness, of smallness, all of these words that we have to describe this experience. But when we come to understand that we're there, we have this marvelous capacity to choose to go beyond that, to make a mind shift. And the tool of forgiveness is one of the keys that we have to make that happen, to make that mind shift, to effect that mind shift. We go from the darkness to the light. Right? And what we understand about that is that no matter where we are in consciousness, no matter how dark it is, that the light is always present. What this means is that which we're looking for, the reverence, the holiness, the awe, the wonder, the Holy Spirit, the activity of God is always present. We can take any moment of our life. And if we come into the right consciousness, we can see the presence and power of God. We can feel the presence and power of God within us. Again, let's just repeat. How do we do this? Right? How do we do this? Well, we can consciously receive a blessing. We can come into the experience of grace, of holiness, reverence, peace, the experience of the Holy Spirit, the experience of kindness and comfort. And we can do that by giving it, which is the main focus of our message here today. there's a process that happens. Number one, we come to understand that we're in this limited mindset. We're in a prison of our own mind. We're stuck in anxiety and fear and worry and limitation. Maybe we're stuck in condemnation or judgment, right? And we want to free ourselves of that. We come into the understanding that that's not where I want to be. I want to make a change. I need to make a change. That's the first step. That's right away. That is already high consciousness, realizing where we are, understanding that there's a way to move from that mindset to another, to go from the darkness to the light. Now, we ask, typically, in spiritual circles, we teach about asking God to help us. But here's the truth. The blessing is already there. Our asking is simply a direction of our intention, right? We want to change. We need to change, whatever you want to say. But we are making when we ask, we're setting an intention. And we're also, by implication, declaring a willingness to change. If we're asking for change, if we're asking to be moved, well, then we're declaring on the inside that we're willing to let go of the state of mind that we're in favor of one that's more aligned with the truth of our being. And so in making that willingness, how do we know if we received it? Well, like I said, in truth, we have already received it because it's never gone. It's never absent. It's always there. But here's the key. We come to understand that we receive it when we can offer it, give it, extend it to somebody else. That's the main focus of our message today. And here's the key. Giving is receiving. Giving is receiving. Imagine in your mind the word giving, put an equal sign, and have receiving. Giving equals receiving. If you take any one of those out, you don't have the other. Giving is receiving. This is an important concept for us because maybe we tend to stop at the first part, which is just to hold that sense of awe or wonder or holiness within ourselves. But the real truth is we come to fully receive it and experience it when we give it. Now, I work as a chaplain in a long-term care health facility. And we have many people there who come from a marginalized part of our city here in New York City. And we have one guy, I'll call him Jose, who comes to the pastoral care office where I work regularly, and he asks for money. He wants $1 for a soda or something like that. And obviously, we don't want to give him money. If we give him once, he'll never stop coming back. And we're also, legally not allowed to be able to give him money. But he comes and he insists on he wants some money. Well, recently, he came by and he said that his birthday, that this was the week of his birthday, and he really wanted us to give him some money in celebration of his birthday. Now, I may have been less than kind, maybe, in denying him that money. Okay, he went away, and when I walked in the next day, I noticed that in the doorway of our office, there was a smell of urine and a pool that looked wet in the carpet. I talked to my boss about it, and we had reason to believe that this fellow, Jose, had actually urinated on our doorstep. Now, he came later that day asking for money, and I was angry. I went and I confronted him. I said, Jose, you come here asking for money and then you urinate on our doorstep. At first he denied it, but I told him, look, we got cameras here. We got recording of you doing this. There's no denial of it. This is you. And then he got kind of uppity on it and he went away angry. Before he went away angry, I was angry with him. And I yelled at him and I insulted him. And I called him a pig. I said, "You're a pig." He went away angry. Now, after that encounter, I sat and thought about this for myself, right? And I was thinking, well, sometimes you need to speak strongly to people so that they really get the message. Kind of like Jesus in the temple when he turned over the money changers, right? He needed to really express anger there so people would get the message. Well, I think Jose really got the message, right? So I don't regret doing that, but inside I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good the way I got angry at him, my judgment of him, and calling him a pig, right? And so I started thinking about that. And I thought, I don't like that feeling. Let me see what I can do. And again, this is the first step, the recognition that you want something to change inside of you, something you're not comfortable with, right? So I went through the process I've just described to you. My judgment, my condemnation, my anger, my insult of him, I had to face that. I say, I'd like to experience this differently. Okay? And what I did is I asked for help. I said, God, a little prayer, can you help me see this differently? Nothing seemed to happen. Well, as I did more prayer, or I accessed the inner wisdom within me, I seemed to get a message. I seemed to have heard a voice that basically said, help him. I kind of blinked my eyes. I said, what? Help him was the message. Very clear. And then I, understood. If I could see him differently, then something inside me would also change. Giving is receiving. So that's what I did. I went into prayer and I said, God, I'm willing to let go of my judgment, of my condemnation, of my anger regarding him. I'm willing to see the mistake that I made. And I realized, what I realized? I realized that in my own life, I have done some ugly things when I wanted to have revenge over somebody who's hurt me. I've had bad thoughts. I've done bad actions. In other words, I've participated in revenge just like Jose. In other words, Jose and I were brothers. Now, maybe I've never urinated on somebody's door, but still, the idea of expressing revenge is not something that is foreign to me. So when I realized that, I realized, oh my gosh, Jose and I are one. And then I went through the process of seeing how it is that I could see him as he truly is, as the child of God that he is, to see him just as God created him. And in my inside, I began to see him differently as the child of God. Now, it took Jose about a week to return to my door, and I was not going to apologize. I decided I was not going to apologize. I decided, however, that when he came, I would not treat him with anger or insult, but rather I would treat him as the child of God that he is. In other words, my behavior had changed. I didn't offer an apology. I felt it was important not to apologize. But when he did show up, I was able to look into his eyes and to see the child of God, to see him more along the idea of who he is, just as God created him. And so this is the important lesson that we need to learn today, that giving is receiving. That extension of giving is essential in our receiving the blessing, the holiness, the reverence, the awe, the wonder that we want to receive. If we don't extend it to another, we'll always be doubtful of the reality of that change within us. And here's another thing. If we deny our brother or our sister the blessing, we're going to deny it for ourselves. Giving is receiving. So every holy moment, right, if we're looking to fill our heart with more holiness and reverence, involves opening our mind to the rest of humanity and seeing our shared identity requires us to give it to somebody else. And in truth, this is the secret, I believe, of what Jesus was doing with his healing miracles. If you'll notice, every single one of his healing miracles, there's a connection. He connects with the other individual. And he sees beyond the paralytic, right? Beyond the leper, beyond the illness, beyond the need. He sees the essence of who they are, and he offers that vision, either verbally or non-verbally, but he's holding that vision, and that vision transforms the individual. So he's doing that all the time. Now, I like to do this. I think I've shared with you, I'm a wedding officiant, and I like to do, when people are coming into the wedding, I like to be standing there receiving the guests, standing in my position there. And once everybody's settled before the wedding party comes in, I like to tell people to find that place in their heart where they honor that which is sacred and important. And once they find it, I invite them to see the couple in the light of that sacredness, of that importance, to see them that way. In other words, to extend whatever they feel is holy, is right, is reverent within them, extend it to the couple, offering people to give it to them. And more often than not, people after the wedding come up to me and say, that was a beautiful ceremony, and they praised me, but in truth, I haven't done very much except invite them to get into the cycle of giving and receiving, which will ultimately bless them, you see. This is the miracle, because giving is receiving. So, dear friends, if you see yourself in this polarized world, right? Can't seem to make heads or tails of where we are. And maybe you describe yourself as spiritual and not religious. All of us are hungry for the experience of holiness, of reverence, of awe, of wonder, of deep movement of spirit. And if you're hungry for it, it can come spontaneously, it can come through spiritual work, but it can also come, and it is essential that we can provoke it through giving what it is that we want to receive. Let me repeat that. We give that which we want to receive. So if you're hungry for that, or hungry for anything, giving is receiving. Juan Enrique Toro greeting you on this wonderful day, thanking you for being with us today. Thank you for the thumbs up, the subscription, and your donations, of course. Always deeply grateful. Reminding you today and always, life is consciousness, and consciousness is life.